I've been married for 3 years, but the only man in this house who actually looks at me is my husband's father. It started with a single, lingering touch over a spilled glass of water, and now I'm playing a dangerous game I don't want to stop. If anyone finds out what happens when the sun goes down in this quiet Seattle suburb, my life will shatter. But God help me, I'm starving for it. It's a strange kind of hell, feeling like a ghost in your own home. Every evening, my husband, Ethan, walks through the front door, drops his briefcase, and retreats into his home office. No hug, no asking about my day, not even a passing glance. Sometimes I just want him to brush my arm, so I know I still exist in the physical world. But his hands are always busy scrolling through his phone. His father, Arthur, is different. Arthur moved in with us last year after his wife passed. Every Saturday morning, I watch him from the kitchen window. He helps the neighbor's kid fix his bike chain, his large, calloused hands moving with incredible patience. I watch his gentle eyes, the soft smile on his face as he speaks. "Hold it steady, buddy. I got it." Standing behind the glass, I wrap my arms around myself, feeling like a lost child, desperate for just a fraction of that warmth. It happened on a suffocatingly hot July afternoon. I was wearing a thin silk slip dress, pouring iced tea in the kitchen. Arthur walked in, stopped in his tracks, and looked at me. Really looked at me. "You've lost weight, Chloe," he murmured. He walked past me, and for a split second, his hand rested on my bare shoulder. It was just a gentle squeeze, but my skin burned at the contact. I let out a nervous laugh, probably just lacking some vitamins. He chuckled, his eyes dropping to my collarbone. The gaze was slow, deliberate, before he quickly looked away, clearing his throat as if nothing happened. But in that 1 second, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I felt like I was doing something terrible. Later that afternoon, I brought a glass of iced lemon water to his room. He opened the door, a faint sheen of sweat on his forehead from working in the yard. "Come on in. You okay? Your hands are shaking." "I'm fine," I lied. As I went to set the glass on his desk, his fingers brushed the back of my hand. My heart hammered against my ribs. He didn't pull away immediately. He let his hand rest there for an extra second, a second that felt like a lifetime. I didn't pull away either. I just stared at the hardwood floor. "You seem sad lately," he said softly. I shook my head, but the words spilled out before I could stop them. "I just wish someone in this house noticed I was alive." Arthur sighed. He patted my hand, his thumb lightly grazing my knuckles. "Don't let the loneliness eat you alive, Chloe." His eyes were so warm, my vision blurred with unshed tears. That night, I wore a tank top and shorts down to the kitchen, entirely by design. I just wanted to hear his footsteps. He was sitting on the back porch in the dark, nursing a bourbon. I poured myself a glass of water, purposely leaning over the counter a little further than necessary, feeling his eyes on the bare skin of my back. I knew I was playing with fire, but I didn't care. I walked out to the porch and handed him a fresh glass of ice. "Here." "Thank you." As he took it, his fingers deliberately brushed over mine. This time, it wasn't an accident. We didn't say a word. The silence was thick, heavy with a confession neither of us had the courage to say out loud. Lying in bed that night, listening to Ethan snoring beside me, my mind wandered down a dark, forbidden path. I imagined Arthur walking into my bedroom, sitting on the edge of the mattress and just holding my hand, caressing my fingers. I didn't even need it to go further. Just the thought of being touched with that kind of tenderness made me silently cry into my pillow. From that night on, everything shifted. I stopped waiting for the sound of Ethan's alarm. Instead, I woke up waiting for the steady, heavy thud of Arthur's boots in the hallway. He was always an early riser, brewing coffee in the kitchen, and occasionally he'd pause by my closed door. I could feel him standing there. One afternoon, I was trying on an old vintage dress I'd found in the back of my closet. It hugged my waist tightly, the neckline dipping just enough to show my collarbones. I stared at myself in the mirror, smiling bitterly. How long has it been since anyone cared if I looked beautiful? A soft knock at the door made me jump. "Chloe, you in there?" Arthur's deep voice rumbled through the wood. I panicked, instinctively pulling the fabric up. "Yeah, I'm here." He stood in the doorway, his eyes sweeping over me before locking onto the dress. He didn't speak right away. He just frowned slightly, then gave a soft, breathless laugh. "That looks beautiful on you, better than anything you could buy at the mall." I blushed, looking down. "I was just trying it on, haven't worn it in years." "You should wear what makes you feel good," he said, stepping into the room. The space between us vanished. I could smell the cedar wood soap on his skin, mixed with the faint, nostalgic scent of black coffee. He reached out, his fingers brushing my bare shoulder as he adjusted the strap of the dress. His fingertips grazed my neck. A full-body shiver wrecked through me. I didn't step back. His eyes darkened, warm and devastatingly sad. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay," I whispered, though my lower lip trembled. "I just feel like I'm missing something, like a hug, just someone asking how I am." He didn't say anything, but his hand rested there on my shoulder. It burned with a heat that felt like he was transferring a raw, unnamed emotion straight into my bloodstream. The tipping point came on a rainy Tuesday. Ethan texted me from downtown, "Having drinks with the guys from the firm, sleep without me." I laughed out loud in the empty living room. Then the power went out. The storm knocked out the grid. I fumbled my way into the kitchen, my heart doing strange things in my chest. Arthur was already there, lighting a thick pillar candle. The flickering orange light threw shadows across his face, making him look rugged, lonely, and incredibly handsome. "Afraid of the dark?" he asked. I shook my head, even though my heart was beating out of my chest. He set the candle down, picked up a flannel shirt from the back of the chair, and held it out to me. "Put this on, it's getting cold." As I took it, I let my fingers drag slowly across the back of his hand. He didn't flinch. He didn't pull away. Instead, he turned his hand over and gripped mine. His grip was firm, rough, and entirely masculine. It only lasted a heartbeat, but it sent a rush of heat straight into my bloodstream. We ate dinner by candlelight, just the two of us. He plated my food, his movements incredibly gentle. "Eat up, Chloe, you've been looking pale. If you keep spoiling me, I'm going to have to start taking care of you," I teased. We both laughed, the sound echoing in the dark house like two old friends who had finally found each other again. But as I watched him, I found myself studying the broadness of his shoulders, the shoulders that had carried the weight of a family for decades. I caught myself wondering what it would feel like to rest my head there. After dinner, we washed the dishes together in the dark. He stood right behind me, so close I could feel the heat radiating off his chest. I was so nervous I dropped a wet glass into the sink. He reached around me to grab it. Our arms brushed. I looked up, catching his eye in the dim light. "Sorry, I'm clumsy tonight." "It's okay," he whispered, his voice dropping an octave. "You don't have to be perfect in this house, Chloe." His words hit me like a physical blow. He reached out and wiped a stray drop of water off my cheek. It was so slow, so deliberate. I felt tears prick my eyes just from that simple act of care. It felt like he was touching scars I had hidden for years. Later that night, the rain stopped, but the wind was howling. I sat on the porch, my hair blowing wildly. Arthur came out with 2 mugs of chamomile tea. He sat down right next to me on the small bench. Our thighs practically touched. "Something on your mind?" he asked softly. "If your wife were still here, you wouldn't be this lonely, would you?" He went dead silent. Then, very slowly, he placed his hand over mine. This time it was an undeniable acknowledgement. Everyone needs someone, Chloe. There are some kinds of lonely that only people in the same boat can understand. I turned to look at him. The boundary between us had completely dissolved. A sudden gust of icy wind swept across the porch, and I shivered violently. Without a word, Arthur wrapped his arm around my waist and pulled me flush against his chest. I pressed my face into his shoulder. I could hear his heartbeat thumping wildly against my ear. It was strong, steady, and racing just as fast as mine. In that moment, I knew I was placing my heart into the hands of a man I shouldn't want, but I didn't care. For one hug, for one moment of feeling cherished, I would trade all the lonely years I'd suffered. That night, I lay awake in bed, my skin still humming from his touch. I rolled over, my back to my sleeping husband, and pressed my own hand to my stomach, right where Arthur had held me. People say emotional affairs are 100 times more dangerous than physical ones. They're right, because my body was in Ethan's bed, but my soul didn't belong to him anymore. Things escalated quietly. The tension in the house became a living, breathing entity. Every time we passed in the hallway, our eyes locked, silently asking, "What the hell are we doing?" But neither of us hit the brakes. When I handed him his coffee, I made sure my fingers lingered. When he picked up a dropped napkin, he let his knuckles brush my bare ankle. One afternoon, Ethan was out on a golf trip. The house was dead quiet. I was lying on the living room sofa in a pair of shorts, staring at the ceiling. I heard Arthur's door open. He walked into the living room and stopped. His eyes tracked slowly from my bare ankles up my legs, resting on my chest as it rose and fell, before finally meeting my eyes. I held my breath. He walked over, sitting on the edge of the coffee table, facing me. "You look exhausted." "Didn't sleep well," I murmured. "If only someone could sing me to sleep." Arthur's jaw tightened. A dark, intense look flashed in his eyes. "If I put you to sleep, your husband might have a problem with it." "My husband," I whispered recklessly. "He doesn't even know I'm here." Arthur leaned forward. He reached out and placed his warm, heavy hand over my bare foot. He slowly drew his thumb in a circle against my skin. Every circle sent a spark of electricity shooting straight up my spine to my throat. I closed my eyes, letting the sensation wash over me. Suddenly, he pulled his hand back, standing abruptly. "I'll go make that milk." I watched his broad back retreat into the kitchen, my chest aching with frustration. The line between us was being drawn and erased over and over again. The breaking point arrived a week later. Ethan texted me that his firm was sending him to Los Angeles for 2 days. 2 days. The house felt massive, echoing with the suppressed desires we'd been burying. That evening, I made Arthur's favorite dinner, a pot roast recipe his late wife used to make. He ate quietly, looking up at me through the steam. "You pay attention to a lot of things, Chloe." "I pay attention because I want you to be happy," I said softly. After dinner, I washed the dishes. He stepped out onto the back patio. When I finished, I found him sitting in the dark, smoking a cigar. I sat down next to him. "You feeling all right?" he asked, noticing me shivering in the night air. "Just a little cold." He stood up, took off his heavy flannel jacket and draped it over my shoulders. I grabbed the lapels, pulling the fabric tight, inhaling the deep, masculine scent of him. I looked up. We were inches apart. "You always take care of me," I whispered. "Because you deserve to be taken care of," he replied, his voice rough. My heart twisted. If I ever make things complicated for you, will you be mad at me?" He was quiet for a long time. "I'm only terrified of you getting hurt." "I've been hurt for years. I'm just finally admitting it." Later that night, around midnight, I was lying in bed, wide awake.
I heard footsteps in the hall. They stopped outside my door. The doorknob didn't turn, but I heard his deep voice through the wood. "You awake?" "Yes," I breathed. The door pushed open. He stood in the doorway, the hallway's light casting him in silhouette. I couldn't sleep. Me neither. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. He didn't come to the bed. He sat in the armchair in the corner of the room. I sat up, pulling the blanket to my chest. "There are times," Arthur said, staring at the floor, "when I realize how incredibly weak I am." "Being weak isn't a bad thing," I whispered. He looked up at me. The restraint in his eyes was gone. It wasn't just raw lust, it was a deep, agonizing thirst that had been ignored for a long time. "Do you have any idea how hard I'm fighting to keep things the way they are?" "I know," I said, shaking. "I'm fighting it too."
I threw the covers off, walked across the cold hardwood floor, and knelt in front of his chair. I placed both my hands on his knees. He let out a shaky breath, his large hands coming down to cover mine. He squeezed my fingers tightly. "If we just stay like this?" I whispered, looking up at him. "Is it wrong?" His jaw clenched. "Some mistakes aren't in the actions, Chloe. They're in the feelings." "Then I'll take the blame for the feelings." I slowly rested my head against his chest. I felt every muscle in his body go rigid, but a second later he exhaled a ragged breath and surrendered. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me up off the floor and onto his lap. He didn't kiss me, he didn't push it further. He just buried his face in my hair and held me like I was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. We stayed like that for an hour. The restraint was excruciating, but it made the intimacy 1,000 times deeper. Eventually, he kissed the top of my head, gently set me back on my feet, and walked to the door. "I'm sorry about tonight," he rasped. "Don't be. I'm not." When the door clicked shut, I collapsed onto the bed, my body flushed and my heart racing. We were standing on the absolute edge of the cliff. The next morning, Ethan came home. He dropped his bags, kissed my cheek absent-mindedly, and went straight to his laptop. Everything was exactly as it had always been. But as I stood at the kitchen sink, washing coffee mugs, I felt Arthur step up right behind me. He didn't touch me, but his breath ghosted across the back of my neck. "Don't carry it all by yourself," he whispered, so low Ethan couldn't hear. A tear slipped down my face and splashed into the soapy water. That night, lying next to my husband, I touched my own stomach in the dark. I thought about the warmth of Arthur's arms. I thought about what it would feel like to be truly, entirely loved, to be the center of someone's world. I know I'm living in the gray area between right and wrong. I know tomorrow I'll wake up and play the role of the dutiful wife again. But internally, the war is already over. I've made my choice. I'm not afraid of wanting to be loved anymore, and even if I have to burn my current life to the ground to finally get it, I know I won't regret striking the match.